Alright, so we're back, and I got my cylinders ready here. So now what I want to do is I want to grab this cylinder, and actually, first thing we need to do is we need to grab all the faces of this cylinder and reverse those normals. So normals and reverse. Okay, so in the heads up display, you go normals and then reverse. Okay, and I'll do the same. I'll just check that. Yeah, okay, so those are nice, and you can see these faces are reversed. I'll select all those, make sure they're all selected, and then I'll just say reverse. Okay, so my normals are facing in the right direction. And now, let's go ahead and merge these guys together. So I got my cylinders, I got my B shape. So I'm going to go to Mesh, close my normals thingy there. So I'll grab this guy, I'll grab this guy, and I'll also grab my B shape, and I'll say combine. Alright. And I'm going to come up, actually, let's go vertex. I'm going to grab all the vertices, and I'm going to say merge components. I'm just going to say, I'm going to make sure that this is set to a nice low value, so I'll say 0.001 and apply. Oh, it's a thing of beauty. And you know what? I'm going to apply a new material to this. I'm going to right click and go down to assign favorite material, and I'll say blend. And the reason I put a blend on this is so that it shows these nice highlights, because it gives me these specular highlights. So I got that nice specular highlight there. And I'll go to shading and turn off wireframe unshaded. Oh, it's so nice. It's a thing of beauty. Okay, great. So there's my B. Okay. No bull crap. No weird bull crap edges. Everything looks nice and crisp, relatively speaking. Okay. Nice, really nice, clean topology though. And if I wanted to, I could actually take these guys and put a nice split into there, and I probably will. I probably will split this guy in half actually and copy it to the other side so that the symmetry is perfect. So I'll split this right down the middle. Okay. And I also need to split these guys so that I can get a nice, I can actually split this whole thing in half. So I'll go to face mode. Okay. And in the top view, in face mode, I'm just going to click and drag over these, over one half of this guy, and just say delete. Make sure you're in face mode. Okay. And one thing I need to do is I want to grab these guys here, and I can notice that they're not perfectly to the center of the origin. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to say oh, not to center, transform components. Oop, hang on a second. I think it's a different tool actually. I'm gonna blow that away. And Oh, you know what? That's what I want. So up here on the top, you'll notice that there's little arrows. So what I want to do is bring up my absolute transform channel box here. So what this allows me to do is actually type in values. So when I click on this, I want to make sure that this is on absolute transform. Okay. So the reason I'm doing this is because if I go into the perspective view, you can see that my B is now cut in half. And I actually noticed that a part of my B, so these verts, like if I move this out, I want to be able to copy my B to the other side. But I need to make sure that if I copy my B to the other side, I need to make sure that it's cut right down the middle and that all of the verts, including the ones on this piece here, including these guys have to be perfectly aligned with these guys. Okay, so I can either snap them that way, okay, or let's say everything was sort of jumbled. Like let's say I pulled these verts out a little bit like this, okay, and all of these verts are sort of in different places on the z-axis. So I can see that this is the z-axis. So these guys are a little bit out like this. These guys are a little bit further out like that. But what I can do to set these all to the same value, say I wanted all of these verts. So all of these, not any of these guys. Not any of these, but all of these. Maybe I wanted these to be at 0. In other words, if I come to the top view, if I want all of these guys to be right on this line, right at 0, I can come up, make sure that this is set to absolute transform, and the z-axis at the 0 point is right where the crosshairs meet. So I can say z, 0, and these will all go right to that point on the z-axis. So now I can come back here and I can safely copy. If I go to object mode, I can safely copy this B shape to the other side. So how do I copy my B from the center point to the other side? Well, the first thing I need to do is make sure that my pivot, okay, my pivot is correctly centered right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I want to make sure that my pivot is right at the center of the object. Well, the center of the object is here at this point. Not on this side, but it's at the center. This line of symmetry is right here. So the way I can move my pivot is by holding down the D key. So if I hold the D key, I can move my pivot to any point. Make sure I'm holding the D key. Don't move your object out of the origin. So if I hold the D key, I can sort of move my pivot of my object anywhere if I hold the D key. But I want to snap the pivot actually to here so that when I copy my geometry over, it's going to copy it from the center of the pivot point. So I'm going to hold the D key, hold the V key as well, and snap it there. Okay? So moving the pivot is holding the D key, and we know that point snapping is holding the V key. So I'll hold the V key and I'll snap it there. Okay. And now, if I want to copy my B to the other side, I'm going to say mirror geometry. So under mesh, we have mirror attributes or mirror tools. And I'm going to say mirror geometry, but I want to go to the options box. I'll click that, and I'm going to mirror it on the positive Z, because the positive Z is the direction this blue arrow is pointing. This is the Z axis, Negative Z is this way, positive Z is this way. So I'm going to select positive Z, and I want to make sure that I turn off merge with the original, because I'm not always quite certain that those verts are going to be in line. So in case they aren't, I don't want them to merge. So I'm going to say merge with the original. I'm going to turn that off, and then I'll say apply. So when I apply, you'll see it copies the B to the other side. And again, it copied it right from the center there because I placed my pivot there. Does that make sense? Okay. So I want to remember that I've copied my geometry, but, okay, I have not, these verts in the middle, they are free. They're not welded. So if I select one of these to demonstrate this, I'm just going to select this guy here. I'm going to pull it. Okay, that's not good. Alright, so when I immediately copy geometry over, I want to make sure that I know that those verts are placed in the proper place. So all I have to do is select everything, and I'm going to bring over my edit mesh menu, and I'm going to say merge components. And now I have a nice solid object. So if I go to grab one of these points now, okay, so I'll click anywhere just to deselect. If I grab one of these points, hit W and pull, it's merged. Okay, there isn't two separate points, it's one solid point. All right. So there we go. Beautiful. So now what we'll do is we'll just throw a quick couple of wheels on this guy. So I'll go create poly primitives. I'll say cylinder. And I'm going to rotate this guy 90 degrees. Let's turn this guy off. Let's get rid of the mirroring tools. We'll just have these guys here. Polycylinder, so I rotated it 90 degrees. And I'll move this guy over here. And I'll keep the same number of sub-Ds on the cylinder, on the subdivision axis. I'll keep those 8. I just need 8. Okay. I'll turn my reference back on. Hit the 6 key. Okay, so I'll make my, I want to use my B, I want to be viewing my B in smooth mode. Okay. And I'll just kind of, okay, so my wheels are about there. So, yeah, it's about right. And I'll scale this guy down, move it this way. Okay, move it this way. The wheels, how thick are they? Yeah, give or take. Sure, that's good. Okay, so I'll smooth that. Maybe a little thinner. I feel like making them a bit thinner. Okay, so like that. So now I want to keep these in quads. So one way I can do that, keeping these in quads, is I can literally just blow away these 4 edges by saying, I can select them and I can say Control Delete. Okay. Let's turn off my B. What? Base letter geometry. It's not on there anymore? What's going on? Turn off my B shape. I don't know why that was going on. So I'll select these 4. Okay, I'll say Control Delete, and now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. So these are in quads now. Okay, I've cleaned this geometry up, which is what I want. It's perfect. And now, what I want to do is I want to shape these wheels out. So if I look at my reference, the reference looks like they have sort of like a curve. Okay, it's sort of like it's curved, and then I'll bet it's a little bit flat on the outside. No, it's pretty round actually. pretty round. So if I look at the back, let's just take a look at the back, the wheels on the back here. So it looks like it's rounded like this, but it probably comes in and does a bit of a, because if I look at it like this, what it looks like to me is it's got this sort of comes in, does this like little tucky-inny part, and then out like that. Might be hard to see, but I can sort of make a judgment call myself. So how do we achieve that? Well, okay. First thing, we know that this has sort of like a curve to it. So if I come to this side, and I know that this is sort of, I know that this looks rounded here, so let's round this out. How are we going to do that? Well, we'll take this edge and we'll split it. And then since we have this edge selected, I can just go to the scale tool and scale it from this point here. Just like that. Okay, so carefully I'll just grab this. Let's move it up like that. Okay. And then how are we going to get these sort of divots in here? Well, what we can do are this crease. So I can see if I zoom in, I've got this sort of, it sort of comes out like this, it hunches in, so it's like a rounded sort of curve. It's rounded, and then it does this sort of thing. So it's like a mound, and then a rounded curve as it comes around. So I'll grab, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab these center faces, and I'm going to extrude these faces. So I'll come to face, I'll say extrude, okay, and I'm going to go to offset, and I'm going to offset these guys in, a bit like that. Okay. And I'll actually push them in as well. Okay, just like that. Maybe I'll offset it a little bit more too. That looks about right. Offset. Like that. Okay. Matter of fact, I'm going to offset this a little bit more. Okay, because if I'm thinking about topology, if I want this, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but if I want this ring here, I need to be starting my edge rings a little bit further up. So my edge ring, my first edge ring has to start in at the center. So I want to think about my topology. These edge rings are going to start in here, and I want this radial edge flow pattern to flow out. Okay, so I'm actually going to set my offset, and I'm going to leave this guy maybe at a value of 1.2. Okay. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add edge loops in here. Okay, so I'm going to come over, I'll say insert edge loop tool, and then what I'll do is I'll slide an edge loop here, go like that. Bit there. And then with that edge loop selected, I'll just pull it in just a little bit. so that it's about perpendicular to this or flush to this edge ring. So I want this edge ring to be flush with this edge ring, and actually what I can do is, since it's grabbing it from the center point of this edge ring, okay, since my pivot is on the center point of this ring here, the orange selected one, I can actually hold the V key, and on the Z axis I can snap it to this point so that it's perfectly flush. So if I hit the 4 key, I can show you it's perfectly flush. These two edge loops are perfectly flush. So I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to add another edge loop right here, because actually what I want to do now, and I'm going to pull this out here just like that. Because now what I'm doing is I'm creating this nice shape this way. I'll put another edge loop in here about halfway. Okay. And I'm going to pull these faces out. And I'm going to grab this edge ring and I'm going to pull it out so that I'm creating this sort of divot shape. But again, you guys can see that I really want to maintain this radial edge loop pattern so that I get this nice flow. Okay, and I'm going to take this actually, and I'm actually going to bevel this edge because I want this to be nicely creased. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to come over to my edit mesh tools, and under edge I'm going to say bevel. Okay, so it's beveled that. Okay, and under inputs up here it's added this poly bevel modifier. Actually, you know what, let's go back. Let's use a different tool. You can use the edit mesh bevel, but I'll use mesh tools. Okay, so under my modeling toolkit, see if it says hide modeling toolkit. I already know that my modeling toolkit is open, so I can grab this. If it's not open, just click show modeling toolkit over here. If it says hide, it'll be open. If it doesn't, it'll say show. So you just click that, it'll bring it back up, and then I'll just say bevel. So now with this, I can actually click and drag that bevel attribute. So I want it to be quite tight. So maybe about there. And now it's just crisped up. You can see with my smoothing, you can see how it crisps up that edge. So I just want it to be a very low value, really low value. So like that, 0.12 or something. And I can enter it here. So I'll say 0.12, and then that's it. And then I'll hit the Q key to exit out of that tool. Okay. Alright, so I have a wheel. I have this wheel. So now, with this wheel, I can really just copy it. I'll bring back my B. And I'll just say save, and I'll turn on the move tool and I'll start copying this wheel around. Okay, so maybe I'll just move it in a little bit more, and I'll say duplicate, and I'll move it over. Turn on my reference to see where everything is. That looks pretty good. Okay. And now how I can get these, a little trick. I'm going to turn my reference off. A little trick, if I want to take these two wheels and copy them to the other side, but in a mirroring fashion, all I have to do is take these two wheels. Okay. So I'm actually, let me rename these. So I'm going to say this guy. So this guy, I'm going to rename this guy. This is my first wheel. I'll rename that mesh. We have to do a bit of cleaning up here actually because we've done a bunch of stuff and we have to rename some things and clean up our outliner. But this is mesh wheel 1. I'll call this, actually, I'll copy and paste this name here. So this is mesh wheel 2. So I'm going to grab my 2 wheels. I'm going to say Control D to duplicate them. Okay? And then I'm going to throw them into a group by hitting Control G. So these are now placed into a group. And a group is like a floating folder in space. So you can see that this group has actually been created at the origin. So the origin meaning right in the center. Okay, I can see the group's pivot is right at the center. So it's actually, I've grouped, here's mesh 1, mesh wheel 2, but I duplicated those and I put them into a group, which is like a folder floating in space almost. Okay, so with this group selected, what I can actually do is I can scale the group on the Z, and it will actually flip my wheels to the other side. Okay, so we can see this is the Z axis, this blue blue arrow. So if I actually take this group and I say scale Z -1, so if I actually put this and I type -1 and hit enter, it actually copies my wheels to the other side. Cool, huh? And with my wheels copied to the other side, so I duplicated them and I mirrored them to the other side, I can actually select both of these wheels over here and I can get rid of the group, but I need to unparent them from this group. So these wheels are now inside of this group, but I need to unparent them from the group because they're inside of the group. You can see if I close the group up, they're inside that group. So to unparent them from the group, I'm going to select both of these guys and I'm going to say Shift P. Okay? And now you can see that these are no longer inside the group. I can just delete that group altogether and I have these 2 wheels here. The only problem is the normals are flipped. You can see they're black right now. So normals, my wheels are black. So we can't have black surfaces because that tells us that our normals are flipped. So I'll just say reverse normals. Okay. And there we go. I'll save that. And I'll select these wheels and I'm going to throw existing material, my blin. So I can see I have this nice crisp B shape. Okay, so we're finished for today. Great job. And I'll just close these guys up. Hit F to focus in. Toy letter 03. Okay. So there's your toy letter. Beautiful. All right. Nice. Okay, so in this lesson we just went over how to, we went over how to integrate cylinders into square shapes to get those nice, perfect spherical cylindrical shapes. And this is just a really, really handy sort of method of doing, getting these perfect cylindrical shapes when you're doing hard surface modeling. So when you're modeling things like, machinery parts or things like that, for whatever reason you're modeling that stuff, this is a really nice technique to get these cylindrical shapes integrated into square shapes by sort of planning out your topology and saying, okay, I can keep things all in quads if I have 8 sides here and 8 sides here, and so on and so forth, and then just combining things together to form one cohesive mesh. So the last things I'm going to do actually is you can see how we've got all this crud here. So there's a few reasons why this happens. One, we copied geometry, and two, we combined meshes. So what it's done is it's created all these garbage nodes in history here. So we just want these meshes on their own. So what we can do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to delete the history, edit, delete by type, history, and you can see it's cleaned up my outliner. So if I get out of that, so if I go here, let's actually pull off the edit menu. So I just want you to watch this guy here, delete by type, history, watch my outliner, and it gets rid of all those extra garbage group nodes that it creates when we do those combining of meshes and such, and so on and so forth. So the last thing I want to do is I just want you guys to be aware of this stuff. After you have modeled any type of object, before you go to rig it, or let's just say before a model is passed to the rigging department, the transforms are what we call frozen. So to freeze transforms basically means it takes all of these garbage values that we put onto these guys when we were rotating and moving things around and getting them into position and scaling them around, and it basically sets them back to their default. So your translates and rotates should all be at 0, and your scale should be at 1. So the way we can do that is we can literally just click and drag over all of these guys, all of these objects. So we have everything selected, and what we want to do is we want to come up to modify. So I'll grab the modify channel or menu here, and I want to say freeze transformations. Now watch what happens up here. Okay. Okay. So for some reason, when I said freeze transformation, it actually flipped these normals back. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into normals, and I'm going to reset these reverse. Okay. Okay, so I can just re-flip those back, and again, inputs, because I reversed the normals, it says polynormal, so I just want to select these two again, and then say delete by type. I want to say delete the history again, because I want this construction history gone. Okay, delete by type, history. Okay. So whenever you're finished a model, two things you always need to do: make sure that your history is blown away on all of the objects so that we don't have this garbage construction history here. You can see it's gone. And you also want to freeze the transformations. So you select all of your objects, you come over to modify. Okay, so that's up, modify, and then you say freeze transformations, which sets back all of your transform attributes to their default settings. So translate should be at 0, rotate should be at 0, scales 1. Alright, and then you can just close up your menus. I don't need my outliner. And there's your model. Beauty. Okay, good job. Excellent. And the next video I'm going to send you is on, and I'll be doing this tomorrow because I'm tired. The next video I'm going to send you is on starting the model of your audio interface. Okay, so we're going to be doing an audio interface that's got some similar techniques to this guy, but just a little more hairy. Okay, a little more heavy. So we're going to start that, and I would suggest that you guys just kind of start that model from home and just kind of pluck away at it, because it'll really make your lives a lot easier. And then when we come to doing some UVs and some texturing, you guys are going to be able to texture up your models, get them ready for week 7, and put some nice lighting and render out some sexy renders. Okay, nice job, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.